Every new beginning comes from some other beginning's end. Good day, grade 12 ABM students. This is Ms. Janelle S. Andal, your subject teacher for Fundamentals of Accountancy, Business and Management 2. To start this video, let us have first a recall about the accounting cycle of a service business. The first one is about the transactions. Identification and measurement of external transactions and internal events. The financial transactions that are recognized are those activities that change the value of the asset, liability, and equity. For the step number 2, we have the journalization. Through the use of specialized journal and the general journal, transactions and events are entered into the accounting records. Then we have the step number 3, which is the posting. It is about the summary or the individual transactions that are posted from the journals to the general ledger. Then we have the trial balance. So at the end of the accounting period, the working trial balance is prepared. This involves copying each account and the account balance to the worksheet, which leads us to our step number 5. This step is simply about plotting the items in the unadjusted trial balance on the worksheet. Then we have the step number 6. This is about updating some accounts in the general ledger. For the step number 7, using the information from the worksheet, we will prepare our financial statements. Then we have our last step, which is the closing of the books. Closing the books is the process of transferring the balances of the temporary accounts to the owner's permanent capital accounts. For FABM2, the focus of our discussion will be about the preparation of the financial statements. Financial statements are interconnected reports. How? The first one to be prepared is the SCI or the Statement of Comprehensive Income. This is for the computation of the net income. Then, the net income will be transferred to the SCE or the Statement of Changes in Equity. SCE is the report that presents the computation of the year-end balance of equity accounts that are reported in the equity section of the Statement of Financial Position. And then, the cash flow statement will be prepared for us to find out the cash part that will be reported on the SFP. So, every report will end on the SFP or the Statement of Financial Position, which is our first topic for this video. The Statement of Financial Position. Here are our learning targets. First one, we need to explain the purpose of the SFP. Ano nga ba ang ginagawa ng SFP para sa isang business? Second one, we will identify the elements of the SFP and describe each of them. Then, we will classify the items as current and non-current accounts. The Statement of Financial Position. I am hoping na naaalala nyo pa ang paggawa natin ng balance sheet. What is the origin of the name balance sheet? The balance sheet is divided into two parts. Kung naalala ninyo ang ating accounting equation, which is asset is equal to liability plus equity, yun ang equation na nagre-reflect sa ating SFP. So, I am confident na napag-aralan natin siya ng maayos last semester at ma-apply natin yung ating nalalaman sa asset, liability, at equity dito sa paggawa natin ng Statement of Financial Position. Let us recall that the assets are on one side and then the claims are on the other side. Anong bumubuo sa claims? Ang claims ng creditors, which are called the liabilities, while the claims of the owner, which is referred to be the equity. So, ibig sabihin, the total of the assets, pag pinagsama lahat ng asset, dapat mag-i-equal siya dun sa total claim kapag pinagsama alin, si liability at si equity. So, this statement was endearingly referred to as a balance sheet because it is a statement where the two parts must be balanced. Diba? Lagi ko sinasabi sa inyo, dapat balance. Si assets, balance kay liability at kay equity. Here's the other definition of statement of financial position. This statement includes the amounts of the company's total assets, liabilities, and owner's equity, which in totality provides the condition of the company on a specific date. This reports the resources available for the company to use, the obligations that the company is required to settle, and the equity that belongs to the owners of the company. Kung napanood na ninyo ang K-drama na Itaewon Class, there is a part there that when they had a problem, ang hinanap ng kanyang kaibigan ay ang kanyang SFP. Diba, ang Itaewon Class is about a business, a company, or a corporation na tinatayo ng mga bida. So, dun sa part na yon na problema sila at nag-ask sila ng tulong dun sa isang kaibigan. At ang sinanap agad ng kaibigan ay ang statement of financial position. Bakit? Kasi it provides the condition of the company on a specific date. Ibig sabihin, malalaman, baka sobrang taas na ng liabilities, hindi na lahat na ng assets na punta sa liabilities. Baka sobrang unti naman ng part ng sa owners. Baka hindi na siya nagiging balance. Kaya nagkakaproblema. So, the statement of financial position provides the condition of a company on a specific date. This explains the importance of SFP in the operations of a company or a business. So, here is an example of statement of financial position. As you can see, we have here two columns. So, yung paggawa ng statement of financial position will be discussed next week. Okay? So, ngayon, focus lamang tayo sa kung ano ba ang itsura, ano ba ang content ng statement of financial position. The first one will be about the assets, and then the next part will be the liabilities and the owner's equity. So, kay assets, as you can see, the totality is 3,150,000 at nung nakita natin sa liabilities and owner's equity, 3,150,000. So, actually, pinagawa ko na ito sa inyo before. Nung kayo ay grade 11. So, ito, i-recall lamang natin. And then, we will be more organized in our accounts. So, we need to identify which are assets, liabilities, and equity, and from that, which are the current assets and the non-current assets, and which are the current liabilities and the non-current liabilities. Let us proceed to the discussion of the different accounts found on the SFP. Inuulit ko, meron lang tayo yung asset, liability, at equity. Di ba 5 major accounts yon? Revenue at saka expenses. Hindi sila recorded kay SFP. Inuulit ko, ang ating expenses at revenue, hindi sila kasali sa ating SFP. Okay, madidiscuss natin siya sa ibang statement or sa ibang financial statement. So, ngayon, focus lamang tayo kay asset, liability, and equity. So, let us start our discussion about assets. So, these are the resources that an entity owns in order to derive some future benefits. These assets are used by the company in its normal operations, such as the manufacture of goods or delivery of services. So, we have here two classifications of assets. The first one is about the current asset, and the second one is about the non-current asset. It only differs based on the realization. When the assets are expected to be realized within the ordinary course of business or in a span of 12 months, that is considered to be current assets. When it is not, all the other assets which are not current are the non-current assets. Paano ba natin nasasabing na re-realize? Realization here only means that the assets are expected to be converted in cash, sold, or disposed. So, kapag madali siyang ma-convert sa cash within a year, that's a current asset. And if it's not, it's a non-current asset. So, let us have the first example of current asset. Here we have the cash. Alam ko naman na kayo ay familiar na dito because this is the most basic and most familiar of all assets. And it is also considered to be the most liquid current asset. So, napag-aralan na natin ito before. So, pinakamadaling gamitin ang cash, di ba? Kahit naman sino, basta may cash. Pero inuulit ko, hindi lamang ang cash ay yung nag-i-include sa nahahawakan nating pera. Money means everything composed of the bills and the coins considered as legal tender. But also, cash includes the money in the form of bank deposits in checking accounts and saving accounts. It can also include checks such as those provided by customers in payment for goods or services received. For our next example, we have the accounts receivable. So, accounts receivable are the oral promises to entity to receive cash at a later date. For example, a normal business transaction, kayo ng magkaibigan, halimbawa kayo magkaibigan, ikaw ang seller. So, ikaw ang nagtitinda ng iyong product. Yung product mo, binigay mo sa kanya, sa iyong friend, pero hindi niya agad mababayaran. Pero, syempre, ina-expect mo that you're going to receive a cash at a later date. So, that is considered to be accounts receivable. Okay, you're going to count it, you're going to record it as accounts receivable. Companies also set up a contra-asset account called allowance for doubtful accounts or the bad debts account. This bad debt allowance estimates how much of their current receivables are uncollectible. So, minsan class, sa kasamaang palad, hindi nababayaran, di ba? Hindi napapabalik. So, a company, nagpo-provide siya or nagse-set up siya ng contra-asset, which is called the allowance for doubtful accounts or the bad debt allowance. So, here, the uncollectible accounts ay doon siya mapapasama sa bad debt allowance. Another current asset is the short-term investments. This contains the company's investments, low-risk, highly liquid assets such as bond and stock, which are expected to be liquidated in less than 1 year. So, meron tayong tinatawag na short-term investment. Siyempre, ang kabaliktaran niyan ay yung long-term investment. Kapag ang iyong investment ay ina-expect mo magli-liquidate in less than 1 year, pasok siya kay current asset. Pero kapag hindi at pang matagalan, siyempre dun siya kay non-current asset. Here we have the notes receivable. This is similar to accounts receivable. Pero si accounts receivable, oral promises. Dito kay notes receivable, the account represents promises to the entity to receive cash at a later date, pero meron kayong written agreement. Kaya ang note receivable ay tinatawag din na promissory note. So nililinaw ko, si account receivable, si note receivable, parehas ng case. Ang pinagkaiba kay account receivable, oral lamang ang inyong promise. Oral lamang ang communication or nag-usap lamang based sa pagsasabi na hindi pa mababayaran. But when it involves promissory notes, that is under the note receivable. Under current assets, we also have inventory. So, these are the items ready to be sold. For example, meron kang isang tindahan, lahat ng iyong paninda, pasok yan kay inventory. Doon mo siya i-record under kay inventory. Pero si inventory also includes raw materials, work in process items, and the supplies that you're going to use to produce the product. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, kay inventory, halimbawa, nagtitinda ka ng pagkain, yung iyong mga ingredient, pasok siya kay inventory. So, these are the items ready to be sold and also the items that you're going to use for the preparation or for the production of your finished goods. Also, under current assets, we have the prepayments. A prepayment is an amount simply paid in advance for goods or services and anticipated to be received by the entity in the future. So, ibig sabihin na uuna yung payment. It is paid in advance for the goods and services. So, ina-anticipate mo na marireceive mo yung service or yung product in the future. Ano bang example nito? Yung rent, yung salary, yung utilities, and insurance paid in advance. Diba? Halimbawa, ang insurance, hindi mo naman siya agad-agad matatanggap eh. 'Di ba? So, halimbawa, nagkaroon ka lang ng accident or merong hindi magandang nangyari, so tsaka mo na marireceive yung insurance, pero binabayaran mo siya palagi. So, pasok siya kay prepayments under current asset. Now, let's proceed to the non-current assets. The first one is the investment. So, it is considered to be the most liquid of non-current asset. So, ito ay kasama lahat ng investment na hindi mo marirealize within 1 year. So, kung hindi siya short-term investment, long-term siya. So, pasok siya kay investment under the non-current assets. Then we have the fixed assets. So, they can also be called as the PPE, the property, plant, and equipment. This is the most tangible, longest-serving assets a company can have. So, ano bang pasok dito? Yung land, the land improvements, the building, the machineries, equipment, and furniture. Siyempre, siya ay ina-expect natin na dapat non-current kasi pang matagalan. Hindi naman tayo bibili ng equipment na gagamitin lang natin ng maikling panahon, diba? So, ang fixed assets, non-current siya kasi pang matagalan mo siyang gagamitin. We are expecting that it will last longer than 1 year. I hope you can still remember the intangible assets. This is the opposite of the fixed asset because it is intangible. Hindi na siya nakahawakan, hindi siya kapasok sa ating PPE. Pero siya ay represented in written documents or certificate na nagsasabi ng ownership status and description. Ano ba ang example nito? Patents, copyrights, franchises, goodwill, trademarks, and licenses. And then, all the remaining items na hindi pasok doon sa ating current assets at doon sa nabanggit kanina ay kino-consider na lang natin na other assets. Now, let's talk about liabilities. These are the claims of external parties from the entity. Pinakamadaling definition, these are the debts of the entity to external creditors. So, ibig sabihin, may obligation kang bayaran sa iba. Not only in terms of money, but it can be terms of service or anything na pwede mong ibigay na form ng iyong obligation. Siyempre, meron din tayong dalawang classification. The first one is the current and the non-current. So, same pa rin. Kapag within 1 year, kaya mong masettle and mabayaran, within 12 months, current siya. Kapag hindi, non-current liability siya. First example of current liabilities, the opposite of account receivable, it is the accounts payable. Kung sa account receivable, si entity ang nasa receiving side, ngayon, sa accounts payable, si entity na yung magbabayad. Siya yung borrower natin. Siya may obligation sa iba. Next one, we have the notes payable. So, kagaya ni notes receivable, here the entity is the borrower at siya ang gagawa ng promissory note na nagsasabi na mababayaran niya ang pagkakautang niya in the future within a year. So hindi dapat siya pangmatagalan kasi nga siya ay under current liabilities. Pag maiklian, halimbawa ilang months lamang or ilang linggo lamang tapos naka-written promise siya, that is considered to be notes payable. Then we have the accrued liability. So, laging ito ang nakakalito sa iba. So, let me read the definition again. These are all other accounts which the company should pay arising from the normal course of the business. Throughout the operating cycle, it is very much possible that the company has already received benefits from certain events, yet has still been unable to pay for it. Anong example? Water and electricity expenses. Diba? Na-consume mo na, nagamit mo na, pero hindi mo pa nababayaran, that is under the accrued liabilities. Also under current liabilities, we have the current portion of long-term debts. So dito, halimbawa may utang ka na 10 million. Tapos, ngayong taon, you are going to pay 1 million. So, pasok siya kay current liability kasi nga, portion lamang siya nung iyong long-term na pagkakautang. So, these are long-term debts payable within the coming year. Then we have here the other payables. These include those which are due from the entity outside the normal course of its business. For example, class, sa isang company may utang ka na 10,000 pesos. Pasok siya sa iyong accounts payable, di ba yung 10,000? Kaso nag-earn siya ng interest na 2,000 pesos. So, saan papasok yung 2,000 pesos? Paano mo siya i-record? Saan siyang account papasok? Siyempre, doon sa other payables, which is the interest payable. Okay? Kasi, aside dun sa 10,000, nag-earn pa ng interest na babayaran mo din. Kaya siya ay pasok sa other payables. Let's proceed to the first example of a non-current liability, the bonds payable. So, these are even a degree more formal than notes payable. Bakit dapat maging more formal to? Kasi bonds payable are a form of long-term debt that often in huge sums contained in an agreement called as the bond indenture. So, hindi siya promissory note, siya ay sa bond indenture. Kasi nga, mas malaking amount ang ating pinag-uusapan kapag bonds payable. Now we have the equity. The equity reflects the residual claims or net assets of the owners of an entity. These are only residual claims of the owners since the creditors get their share of the entity first before the owners are given their share. So, halimbawa, diba, sa ating accounting equation, asset is equal to liability plus equity. Nabayaran mo ng lahat doon sa liability. Ano na lamang natira? Yung equity. Kaya, yung equity na yon yung share nung owners doon sa kanilang company. I just want to clarify na yung accounts na aking present ay hindi lamang sila yung accounts na makikita natin sa SFP. As long as na siya ay asset, liability at equity, pasok siya sa SFP. So, marami pang different accounts, basta ang kailangan ninyong gawin, identifyin nyo lamang kung ano ba yung account na yon. Siya ba ay asset, liability, or equity? Siya ba ay current or not current? So, there are different accounts na makakasalumuhan ninyo and kailangan nyo lamang siyang i-assess kung saan ba siya papasok. Kay asset, kung kay liability, or kay equity. I hope that you learned from this discussion, and if you have questions and clarifications, you may ask them during our Zoom meeting or you may send them in our class group chat. Thank you so much for watching this video. Good luck and God bless you all.